So let's take a couple minutes and look at Moses' response to seeing God's holiness. First, he humbled himself and he worshiped, right? He bowed himself down, he put his face toward the earth, and he worshiped God. But then he asked for God's presence. Even though he was in God's presence, he asked for God's presence, not because he was afraid that God was going to leave. There's a value there. When something is given and you desire it, you value it, you love it, you keep asking for it, right? And so even though God was there, Moses says, stay with me. Stay with us. Please do not leave us. And then he confessed their sin. And what's the sin that he confesses? Notice he doesn't confess. He doesn't say we're an idolatrous people. Because sometimes we like to deal with the actions rather than the heart condition. Sometimes if we're honest, we look at the behavior and we say, oh, I don't want to act like that. And God's trying to say that you can't be. There's something in your heart, because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Jesus says that all manner of evil comes from the heart. And so Moses doesn't say, deal with our idolatry. Moses says, deal with our stubbornness, because the reason that we're idolaters is because we're stubborn. We want what we want it the way we want it, in the time we want it. We are convinced that our dreams are right, our goals are right, our hopes are right. It's got to be done my way. And that's what leads us to all of our sin, is what Moses is saying. Man, how many of us are dealing with the circumstances rather than the heart condition, right? How many of us are saying, God, I don't want to do this anymore. And he's trying to say, well, then you can't be this anymore. That the reason that you're anxious, like we keep praying, God, help me not to be anxious. And he says, well, then you got to learn to trust me. We just want to stop feeling anxiety. We just want to stop saying this or acting this way or feeling the anger that burns up in us. And God's trying to say, no, there is a heart issue that I want to deal with, because when I deal with your heart, it'll change all of your behavior. We'd settle just for the behavior change. If we're honest, right? Like we'd settle just to not do that anymore. But then we're still the same. We're still as Diane led us, we're still not reconciled. Because reconciliation isn't a change of behavior. Reconciliation is a change of being. That's why 2 Corinthians 5 makes it so clear. We're new creations. We're not the same old people with new behavior. We're brand new people. So Moses prays, he repents, he acknowledges, he confesses the sin of Israel. And that confession is what? We are a stiff-necked, we are a stubborn people. But then Moses doesn't ask God to take them to the promised land. He asked God to make them his inheritance. Moses didn't say, now that I've seen you, take us to the promised land. He said, now that I've seen you, please make us your people. When Moses saw God, he realized that the work needed to be done in them. God was able to take care of their lives and their enemies, their food and their water, their journey, and even the promised land. They needed God to work in their hearts. See, we tend to pray, God, be our God, be our God. Do what you promise. Take us where we want to go. We even tell God when to do things, right? How many times have you prayed, do it, Lord, do it now, Lord? You ever think about how arrogant that has to sound?